Talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Press one if y'all can hear me. Three, two, one, man. So what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? We are back in the studio, and today, um, trying something new. I'm testing something with my YouTube page. So the Done is Better Than Perfect YouTube page is live. So go to youtube.com / the @ Derrick Harper Sr. And it's at Derrick Harper Sr. across every platform. So, man, we got some amazing people tuning in and watching. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be discussing some of the things that's trending, some of the things that um, are affecting people because we're going into an unprecedented economy right now. And what most people don't understand and they don't, know is about banks and the way that they lend. And, when it's a recession market, a lot of people don't understand that a recession is the only way to really fix inflation, right? Because inflation means that a bunch of money just got printed and the value of everything really went down, but the price of everything went up, right? And in order to fix that, a recession basically comes. It ain't like a recession just sitting back like, oh, I'm gonna come in. So what a recession is it's basically less money getting printed. Rates of everything have to go up to kind of like make the prices or to kind of match the value, and then less people buy in a recession. And when less people buy, the prices of everything start to come down, and so on and so on. But it's always a downhill. It's always a trickle effect when that happens because when banks stop lending, a lot of companies really stop getting that capital that's floating them for operations, personnel, and things like that. So you normally see fallouts in a recession of a lot of people losing their jobs. And what happens when people lose their jobs, right? They start taking hits and they can't pay their car note, they can't pay their mortgage, and they start taking credit hits, right? So I'm big on telling people I'd rather have the credit and not get it than to need it and not have it. But I want to make sure that people are responsible if they do get it. So I'll be going to the comments and things like that. But I'll be kind of going over some things that you can do to get your credit right. And I'll be taking some calls. You'll actually be able to call in the hotline at 213-444-2348. I'm going to start doing this normally. And yeah, I'm just happy. So basically, I'm here kind of flexing this little setup, man. It's been long overdue. Finally got the podcast studio the way that I want to. I can flip it 4 different ways. As you can, I haven't did the tour yet, but I have 1, 2, 3. I have 6 screens, right? 6 different setups, different angles that you could do 6 different shows from. So on and so on. So if you know somebody who really needs this information, I'm not going to post a link. I'm not going to try to make money off anybody. I'm just trying to really just give game, right? So when it comes to your credit score, though, a lot of people don't understand because they're watching Credit Karma, right? And they're saying, "Hey, what's my real score?" I went to Credit Karma, and Credit Karma said that my score was this, and then that. What is my real score? So that's what I want to kind of get started with. When it comes to the credit bureaus, or when it comes to your score, you have lots of them for one, but you don't really have a real score when it comes to the credit bureau. And I'm talking about FICO, right? Because FICO is Fair Isaac Corporation. But let me go ahead and start this back from scratch. So the average person would go to Credit Karma and they would pull their credit, and they would say, hey, I got a 700 on TransUnion or Equifax or whatever one they pull, right? And then they would say, well, now I'm ready to actually go get a loan from the bank. And then they would go inside of the bank, and then the bank would be like, bro, get out of here with that. And it was like, you know what the score is when the score is get out of here with that, right? It's no particular the phone number. I mean, it's no particular score on there. It's basically just bad. So let me get into how to even build a credit score, because I think it'll be irresponsible to go down the rabbit hole without even telling you how to even get a credit score, right? And I know a lot of y'all be like, man, Derrick, they taking your info and they pushing it. I don't care. I put it out because I want you guys to start your credit repair companies. I want you guys to go educate. It's in so many financial literacy programs. I really don't care about who gets the credit for it. I really care about people being able to survive in this market. So if that makes any sense. So one of the things that I want you to understand is it's a different in score in the first place, right? You have what's called a FICO score. FICO is Fair Isaac Corporation. And it was founded in 1956 by Bill Fair and Earl Isaac, right? And so two guys met in the Navy. One was a data scientist, one was a mathematician or whatever. So anyway, they pretty much created an algorithm to calculate how likely you are to be able to pay back stuff. They also calculated how likely you are to, your risk score as far as like medical bills and things like that. We're not going to go down there. So basically, they created an algorithm that said, hey, we can calculate the likelihood of a person and how likely they are to go 90 days or later. And this is before they actually start reporting on credit, right? Because it was just a FICO score. It was just a scoring algorithm, because you had a data scientist that knew how to take data and calculate it, and you had a mathematician that knew how to calculate the data, right? And so it used to be called Fair Isaac and Company, and then they changed the name a few times, Fair Isaac Corporation, but it stayed FICO, and that's Bill Fair for the Fair, Earl Isaac for the I, right? FICO. That's a FICO score. Now, those are the algorithms that most banks and most lenders actually adopted to be able to calculate a risk of how likely you are to be able to pay back a loan. See, we call it a credit score, but it's really a risk indicator. So I want you to go ahead and put risk indicator in the comments. So a risk indicator is how likely you are to be able to pay back something. Now, a 300 means that's the lowest you can get. That means, bro, ain't never gonna pay nothing back. You at the worst it can be. 850 means that you're the cream of the crop, right? And all of the data that's calculated in between that ranges between 300 and 850 traditionally, right? And so now what happens with that though is they said, well, we can calculate the data, but we don't have the data. Who had the data? See, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, they're credit bureaus. Contrary to popular belief, and there's a lot of people who probably haven't been repairing credit for a while, don't listen to all of those gurus who's telling you that there's no such thing as a credit bureau. They don't know what they're talking about. The definition of bureau means somewhere to file something or to store something, a drawer or chest or something like that. Now, we're not talking about like the government bureau, like the IRS or the Federal Bureau of Investigation, things like that. They're not saying that they're a bureau as far as a government agency. They're saying they're a bureau, which means they store data. And that's exactly what it means. Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian stores data and information on you, and that's it. So FICO calculates the data that Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian has, right? And what happens with that is when you go into lender and you say, hey, go ahead and pull my credit, what happens is they actually pull your report from Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, whatever lender they decide to pull. And then once that report is generated, it calculates through a FICO algorithm and it kicks you out of score at that point. And so now when it kicks the score to that lender, the lender says, that score may look in, the risk indicator may be a 720, the risk indicator may be 770, right? And so what happens there is you might say, well, I went here and it said 730. Why are you saying 745? One might have pulled Experian, one might have pulled TransUnion, and TransUnion information and Experian information might have been missing something. And the reason that might differ is you might say, well, why in the world the score is different? You might apply for a few things and they only pull Experian, right? Or they only pull TransUnion. So let's say if I went in there and I applied for a bunch of things, and they pull TransUnion, that means my TransUnion report now has more inquiries. Knowing that inquiries are 10% of my score, I'm going to take a hit in that 10% area. And if they hadn't pulled Equifax, now in my inquiry category, I'm not even losing points there. So therefore, the calculate that the data that's calculated might be different at that point. So now what's happening is they said that, well, hey, in order to be able to calculate a risk score, I need the data. So Equifax TransUnion Experience said, well, all right, we can collect the data, but we got to be able to get it from the banks, right? So now the banks created an agreement with them to be able to furnish data in return if they can actually furnish information to them based on how other people pay, right? That's a longer story, and I actually get into that in another episode, right? So now what happens is when you go into a score, you get confused because gurus are telling you, hey, your credit file, blah, 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 your credit report, blah, 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 your credit score, blah, 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 without telling you that a credit file, a credit report, and credit score are all three different things. See, the credit file is something that's been reported on you all the time, right? That means that every time you've applied for something, every time you've ever done something, that's a credit file. Everything that's ever been reported on you goes into a credit file. And the way that you can get the credit file, go to LexisNexis. You'll see all the little nasty stuff about yourself, right? And I'm talking about if you're a registered sex offender, you got speeding tickets, you went to court, you changed your name, you registered your tag. Everything that you can think of is on your credit file through LexisNexis, right? Now, what happens though is because a credit report is not a credit file. Now we can start getting into the different FICO scoring models, right? Because as if this wasn't already complicated enough, you have different FICO scoring models. Yeah. And the crazy thing about it is some of those scoring models might say, hey, we don't want hospital bills on here. Some of them might say, hey, we don't weigh inquiries as heavily. We don't weigh as much credit card debt as the other one, right? That's why you have different FICO scoring models. And those models, what they do is they say, well, all right, I might want all the hospital bills, or I might want all late payments within the last 2 years, blah, blah, blah. And that's why when you see FICO 8, FICO 5, FICO 9, 9 and 10 that people are talking about, those are different scoring models that require certain things, right? And then now FICO 10T is a trended data thing, which means that now the way that they calculate your utilization is no longer if the last month had 0% interest. No, they do trended payment data, which means that they look at how you pay your credit card over the last 24 months. And that's a FICO 10T, one of the newer models that they're actually trying to work on, right? Most banks still use FICO 8 scoring model. That's the most widely used for regular and traditional lending. When you go to get a mortgage, though, your TransUnion score that they're going to pull is actually called a TransUnion Classic FICO 4. And then you're going to have an Experian version 2. And then you're going to have a Factor Beacon 5 Equifax score. That's crazy, right? You got 3 FICO scores to get pulled when you actually get a mortgage, but they're different scoring models because TransUnion is pulling the Classic 4. Equifax is pulling a Factor Beacon 5 because you probably heard people say, what's your Beacon score? That means they're pulling a FICO. And then your Classic TransUnion is a 4. And then your Equifax version 2 is basically a V2. So that's one of the oldest scoring models out there. And when you go to get a mortgage, they throw the highest score out, they throw the lowest score out, and then they keep the middle score and qualify you on that score. So let's say if you have a 750 on Equifax and you have a 650 on TransUnion and a 700 on Experian, they're going to use your Experian score to be able to calculate your rate on and say, all right, the 700, this is the score that we're going to be able to qualify you on, right? So, it's already complicated, but we're going to get through this, right? Because we want you to call in and ask questions, and we already got live callers coming in. I'll take that in a second. But one of the things you want to make sure, share this too, because a lot of people are so selfish. Y'all get this information and y'all just want to hold it on to y'allself. I don't care if y'all like me or not, but the thing about it is when you start planting seeds into other people, they grow into some certain things that can be a harvest for you. So stop being selfish and make sure that you go ahead and share this. But anyway, what starts to happen though is, you got the 3 scores. They'll throw the top one out, throw the bottom one out, and then get in the middle one. And I wanted to make sure that I give you all this information first because this is the intro call getting into the credit stuff. And I want to go ahead and debunk all the myths, right? All right, so now let's get into the actual building up the score, right? Let's get into where, hey, because I want to fix my credit, because some of y'all are in position that y'all don't want to sit through a live video. You can't even go out and get approved for nothing right now. And the problem is y'all got too much pride. Well, if you can't log in right now and go and get approved for loans and go and get approved for credit and go and get approved for things that you can actually start using to invest in things that can bring revenue back to you, you probably need to listen. But guess what? You probably got something else way more important to do. So you're gonna go ahead out, enjoy your weekend, and blah blah blah, spend all your money up, and then be in position to where you were. It kind of sucks. Anyway, so now your FICO score, though, being that that's a score that the banks are using, and we're not talking about Vantage. I'll get into that later. But the banks are using a FICO score, and that score is broken up into 5 different categories. You probably read some books, probably took some mentorships where you see people telling you that the score is breaking between 300 and 850, which it is, and it gives you 550 points to play with, right? So when I created that math that, kind of break down to be able to teach people, you've probably seen it all over the internet, and that's a good thing, right? And I remember when I created that video in 2016, and it's amazing seeing that all of the gurus are still being able to use that and educate on, which is amazing, right? I'm not mad, it's dope, right? But it's broken up into 5 different categories, and that's payment history, that is utilization, that is types of credit, that is the age of credit, and that's inquiries, or some people might call it new credit. And out of 100%, payment history is 35% of your score. Utilization, or how much you owe in relation to how much available credit you have, that's 30%. And then you have 15%, which is the age, right? And then you have 10% for the types. And then you have another 10% for like inquiries, right? So 35% of that 550 points, where did I get the 550 from? Your score ranges from 300 to 850. That leaves you 550 points to play with, right? That means 35% of that 550 points is 192.5, right? That 30%, the utilization category is 165 points. And then now you got the age of credit, which is 15% of that 550, that's 82.5 points. And then you have the types of credit, which is 10. That means how many credit cards you have. Do you have installment loans? Do you have promissory notes? All of that. That's 10%, right? And then you got inquiries, which is 10%. That's the least more important, but it can still cause you to get denied with 800 and something credit scores. And I'll tell you why. But anyway, so those are the things that make up the 5 categories in your FICO score. So yeah, if you miss payments, that's going to harm you in the payment history category, because now let's say if you had 10 accounts open and then now you had one missed payment on one credit card and you got 10 accounts open. What happens though is now over a 10-month span, what it looks like is you miss one payment out of 100 payments because you had 10 accounts that were reporting, and then now only one over that 10-month span was reported at least 30 days late, right? But now if you only had one account that was open and you missed it, and then over a 10-month span, it looks like you made one, or you missed one out of 10 accounts. So of course, the more accounts that are reporting on you monthly, it rebounds faster. When you miss a late payment, it starts to rebound better. So go ahead and put this math down. One late payment on a non-mortgage account takes 9 months to rebound, assuming that you did everything that you were doing before that late payment. So go ahead and put that. One late payment, 9 months. On a non-mortgage account, that's the rebounding period. A 60-day late is a 2-year rebound, right? It's between 2 to 3-year rebound period on a 60-day late on a non-mortgage account, assuming that you're doing everything that you're supposed to do before that 60-day late, right? And then a 90-day late, which is considered a key derogatory, or KD, not Kevin Durant, is major, right? Which means that it has a 7-year rebound period, no matter how you look at it. That's why your risk score is not determined based on how likely you are to pay the debt off. It's determined on how likely you are to go 90 days or late on that payment. And because they have the math that says anybody that went 90 days late, it's a 93 to 95% chance that you probably going to end up charging that account off. And so therefore the risk is determined on how likely you are to go 90 days late. And I hope you guys understand that. So now, before we get into the late payments and all of that, I want to make sure that you understand how to dispute and all of that. But there are some people out here telling you that late payments are illegal. And then they will point you to a statute that says, hey, you can't report anything late. But let me tell you what that statute really says. It states, and it has a lot to do when they changed and they talking about the Card Act, right? What happens with these late payments Yes, if your statement rolls on December 1st, let's do the math. Let's do January 1st because December gonna put us into the next year. So let's go January 1st. So let's say if January 1st, your statement rolls on your credit card, right? What happens is by law, they got to give you at least 21 days before the due date. So the date between the statement date and the due date has to be 21 days. That means the date of the credit card statement closes, right? They got to give you at least 21 days to be able to pay it before it becomes due. Now, when that statement closes, let's say if you got a $3,000 balance on there, if you have interest on that card, now, after the statement date, between the statement date and the due date, that interest would accrue. So if you got like a 10% interest, whatever the interest is in there, it would accrue and you actually have to pay that, right? Some of them will say, hey, minimum payment, blah, blah, blah. But you at least have to pay the minimum payment and the interest would accrue. Now, if you don't want interest, you got to make sure that you got to pay the account balance down before the statement rolls and you would have a zero interest. Let's say if you had $2,000 balance on there and the statement rolls on the second, you paid the bill down to zero on the first. When the statement rolls on the second, it will roll with a zero balance and you would have to pay zero on it because it didn't accrue interest, right? But let's get past that. But let's say you had a $3,000 balance and the statement closed on the first. The earliest that the due date can be is on the 22nd, right? So January 22nd will be the earliest that you can have a due date on anything that closed on January 1st. Where the dancing bears try to trick you and say late payments are illegal is because they can't report it late when you're late after the 22nd. And this is what they're talking about. Of course, if they try to report you late after the 22nd, and anybody with common sense who's been working in credit for a while would understand this. It's the new people who popped up out of nowhere who don't understand this, right? It's because back in the day, they used to report you late or not late. If you look at your credit file now, you would probably see something that says 30 days late, but not over 59 days late. So it's between 30 and 59 days late. It's your first late payment, right? And that's after the statement. That means that there's nothing that can be reported late on your credit file until 51 days after the statement rolls. That means that if you have a statement on January 1st for your credit card to be able to pay, you're not 30 days late and you won't get a 30-day late hit on your credit file until February the 22nd or February the 21st because January has 31 days in there, right? So if January 1st, my statement rolled, that means that my due date was on January 22nd. 30 days after that due date is when I'll get reported 30 to 59 days late and get that first initial late payment. And that's 100% legal. And the reason why that's 100% legal is when they say, well, debt collection and all that is illegal. They're lying. The reason why debt collection is 100% legal is because when you actually went in and applied for a loan somewhere, you told them that they can pull your credit and they're authorized to be able to report anything on your file, but it has to be factual. It just means that the Fair Credit Reporting Act states that anybody can report anything on you, but it has to be 100% accurate. And therefore, if they do report it 100% accurate, there's a problem there. Where good credit repair people or credit experts or credit educators or credit advocates come in at is because they understand that just because they're reporting it on you, they still have to adhere to the laws that protect you under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Just because you were 30 days late and they reported it 30 days late doesn't mean that the reporting is always 100% accurate. They could have reported a balance $2 off. They could have reported the terms of the actual loan or the terms of the credit card agreement and things like that off. Or they could have called it an installment account, right? It could have just been mislabeled. Therefore, now those terms, because they did report it and they were 100% obligated to report it, well, not really obligated. They were within their right to report it, but they had to report it 100% accurate. So therefore, that's when things can start actually getting removed from your credit file, right? Because you can leverage that and say, hey, well, because I did do an investigation demand and you guys investigated and came back and said it's 100% accurate. And then I came and I found that you guys reported the terms wrong, which means that now I gave you time to be able to correct it and you didn't. Now you actually violated my rights up under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And so now when people start throwing those terms around and they start wanting to sound like attorneys when they're not, you got to remember when, a lot of times when it comes to credit reporting, that falls up under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, right? Take the fair and the act out. When people say FCRA, take the F and the A out, the fair and the act, right? The fair and the act, it governs credit reporting because it's Fair Credit Reporting Act. Another thing when you're dealing with third-party debt collectors, they're governed by what's called the FDCPA, which means the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Take the fair and the act off. They govern debt collection practices, nothing else. The way that people debt collect and the way that they try to call you and things like that, they have to play by certain rules and guidelines under 1692, which is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Debt collection practices. They can't call you before 8 or after 9. They can't call your job after you tell them no. It's certain things and certain terms that they can and can't do. And if they actually, I don't care if you owe them or not, if they violate those terms, you can actually use that as leverage. A lot of times people use that as leverage to be able to either get that deleted, get it removed, and or get at least up to $1,000 per violation, depending on what the attorney goes for. So just wanted to make sure you guys understood that, right? But one of the main things, because a lot of people jump into credit repair, one of the first things that I want you guys to do is you want to send what's called an investigation request or an investigation demand, right? When people start sending, and I'm gonna give you a sign I'm gonna show you a sign of what to look for in, I wouldn't say scamming companies, and uneducated credit repair companies. If you see them post letters that said, look at all these accounts I got deleted, they probably did something that wasn't within the terms of real credit repair that's governed the right way. Dancing bears usually do things like credit sweeps, which we're not even going to get into that. Anytime that you normally see these letters that have a whole list of deletions, 9 times out of 10, they went and they filed a claim with the FTC, basically stating that it was identity theft, blah, blah, blah. And they filed an identity theft affidavit, and due to section 605, they got to do, give you the benefit of the doubt, blah, blah, blah. That suppresses the account, and that suppression looks like the account is deleted. And then you'll see a whole bunch of suppressions in the name of deletions, but the suppression period might run out, and then those accounts come back, right? But what starts to happen there, though, is when you send an investigation request, right? That means that you're basically telling the bureaus, hey, I looked at my file, went through some things, not 100% that they're reporting accurate. So I'm sending this letter in demanding an investigation. Anything that you find that's not reporting 100% accurate or you can't verify in its entirety, please delete it from my account and send me an updated, to this updated report after your findings to this address, right? And what they do is they do their investigation. They get a certain amount of time, 30 days, right, to go ahead and investigate. And then if they need more time, they would send a letter saying, hey, we need more time, blah, 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 right? And what happens is because you asked them to do a full investigation, you didn't say not mine, because the people that's telling you that everything just got deleted at once went in there and said not mine, but they're fixing your credit. You're 100% responsible for it. And if I'm Capital One and I know that you owe me $5,500 on your credit card, and the first thing that you're saying is not mine, and then you're within the statute of limitation, soon as income tax time come around, all I'm going to do is send the sheriff at your door, or go to Cooling in Winter if you're in the state of Georgia or wherever state you in, and then sue you, right? Because I know that you're trying to get out of paying this, but guess what? I'm going to literally just try to sue you because I see that's the route that you're taking. But guess what? If you send an investigation demand in or investigation request, and then they have to do their due diligence, and it's called a reinvestigation. And the reason why they call it a reinvestigation is because the initial investigation had to be done before it actually got updated or uploaded to your report by the Bureau, right? And so the reinvestigation procedures means that you're asking them to reinvestigate to make sure that everything is reporting 100% accurate. And I love it because now when you send Equifax that, Experian that, and TransUnion that, they're 100% obligated to now by law under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to send you to do a full investigation and send you the findings within 30 days after receipt of that, right? So now let's say if they all come back and they say, hey, we verified it is 100% accurate. And then you compare the three bureaus and you say, well, how in the world did this card note is reporting 100% accurate and the terms on here say 66 months, the term on there says 68 months, and the term on there says 67 months? And that's so common because most people don't just go out and pay their whole car notes, right? Let's say if you do need a deferment for 2 months because times just got hard and you were on 60-month terms and they said that your payment will be added to the to back 2 months. We know that that 60-month term legally has to be 62-month term now because of the deferment period actually deferred it back 2 more months. And now you're on a 60 to 62-month term, which means that now one of the bureaus might have gotten it wrong and still had it at 60 when one got it at 62. And there's no way in the world that all three of you guys could have did the investigation and came up with three different numbers. Now, therefore, I demand you guys delete this and remove this, or I would be forced to seek counsel and come and try to remedy everything from you harming me. And then therefore, now if you start applying for mortgages and getting denied, you can actually start hitting them for damages and things like that. I recommend you getting an FCRA or FDCPA attorney, but you definitely can go ahead and do that, right? So now a lot of mistakes are made there, which is why you want to go do the investigation demand or in the investigation request, because now what you're doing is you're putting the burden of proof on them. The moment that you say not mine and they suppress those accounts and it looks like they get removed and you get those dancing bears with those letters saying, look at all the deletions, and you like, oh, they're the greatest credit person in the world, and then boom, right? And then they telling you like, oh, well, within 5 days, they got to send it in writing, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into that in a whole nother episode. It's crazy, even though they do, but it's certain things that got to happen there, right? So now look, what starts to happen is now when you claim that you didn't do something, claim that you got it, hey, y'all got it wrong. Hey, I never paid late, or hey, blah, blah, blah. That's the worst thing you can ever do. That's the worst thing you can ever do. And the reason why is because now they're going to be like, we verified. Then now you're going to have to prove that you never paid late. Now you can say, well, send me everything, blah, blah, blah. Remember, this is Fair Credit Reporting Act, not Fair Credit Billing Act. Under the Fair Credit Billing Act, you can go ahead and request certain things before you start the investigation, which I highly recommend, because now under the Fair Credit Billing Act, it governs what? If you take the fair and the act out, it governs credit billing, right? And so now when you had TILA, Truth in Lending Act, you had FACTA, Fair Accurate Credit Transactions Act, right? Accurate credit transactions. So FACTA, which is a FACTA 312 letter, is normally what they send out when they want to go ahead and get the accounting records of like credit card payments, card notes, and all of that to make sure that it was accurate credit transactions recorded, right? And for instance, let's say I went out and I booked this fancy vacation, and now it was in September. My credit card statement rolled a $4,000 statement because I had this whole vacation on here. The vacation, or let's not use that one. Let's say if somebody, I bought something that I didn't like, or just didn't turn out to be legit or something like that, and my statement rolled at 4,000, and I got a refund, or I had to fight it, or they charged it back, whatever, right? Now, when that statement rolls next time and they give you that credit, they supposed to go back and amend, that statement, because you didn't run up $4,000. It was supposed to be refunded and things like that. So now when a person goes and get the, fair and accurate credit transactions, basically getting the records of all the statements and the records of accounting and things like that, then you will be able to go back and actually challenge with the original creditor, all of the missed payments and things like that. So that's one of the things that people do when you get a credit card charged off. And then now with the company, they charge it off. And then if they sell it to collections, that charge off, if it has a balance of that $4,000, and then the collection company has a balance of like $4,000, therefore that's inaccurate, because only one of them can actually have a balance, which means that the actual record of the charge off has to be zeroed out, because they actually sold the debt to a collection company, right? And so that collection company who now owns the debt, or who's authorized to collect the debt on their behalf, falls up under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, right? and they fall up under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, because not only are they trying to collect on the debt, they're also reporting that debt on you. So therefore, if the debt collector is reporting on you, they're a credit reporter and they're a debt collector at that point, and they're governed by both. 9 times out of 10, if you got like a Bank of America, they're really a lot of times on a like, on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, because most of the times, Bank of America aren't reporting like reporting like collections and things like that. So the FDCPA a lot of times govern the third party debt collectors. All right, so okay, that went out. All right, so now what you want to make sure is, you either get those records, and we'll be breaking it down. Like we'll go through FCBA. I'll do whole videos on that. So just make sure that you go to my YouTube and you subscribe, because I know I got this across all platforms, but I want to make sure that it's actually running across YouTube. So if anybody who's watching this on another platform, go to my YouTube page where it's Derrick Harper Sr., right? And it's the Done is Better Than Perfect podcast, right? So make sure that you go over there and give me a subscription, right? But one of the things you want to make sure is when you send that investigation request, right? Track it, give it 30 days, keep credit monitoring, right? And then when you get that back, compare and contrast. Anything that differs, if they all come back and they say, hey, we all reported, it's verified. Now, all you have to do is just find any discrepancy across all three, right? And then when you take that, you'll be able to compile that, start the investigation. Now, if they come back after you actually have proof and you gave them time to change it and they didn't, see, the reason why you want to start the investigation request first is because you want to give them a chance to correct it or delete it. Remember what you said. It needs to be reporting 100% accurate or deleted. Sometimes they update it. That's fine. Remember, they're updating. You gave them the chance. Even if they updated and all three of them updated and it's still wrong, you gave them the chance to get it correct. If they updated with incorrect information, they violated your rights up under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, right? So now, a lot of times they still violate your rights in that reinvestigation procedure, because remember, the initial investigation is when they put it on your credit file. So now what happens is you can seek counsel, right? We got one in the inner circle, a Fair Credit Reporting Act attorney, where they'll literally review the case. Doesn't cost you anything, right? They get paid from the creditor. That's amazing. Knowing that they violate your rights, you did things, and then now once you find a violation, you send it over to a FCRA or FDCPA attorney to review the case, and it don't cost you anything. They get paid from them. So they get to eat like fat rabbits off of the mistakes that the bureaus or the debt collectors make, and it don't cost you anything out of pocket. And then guess what? They'll get a little something for you too under the FDCPA if they're violating your rights. If you getting a call after 9 p.m., one of the biggest things and one of the biggest times that this happens is somebody who moves by coastal. And let's say they've been in Los Angeles and they update the debt collector that they now live and their place is in Atlanta. I'm gonna tell you, some people that gave misinformation on this. I want to correct it. If you notify them that you no longer live there, see, people are so busy trying to run from the debt collectors, I ain't giving you no information. And then now you live in Atlanta and you got a 213 number out of LA, and you was in LA when the original contract took place, and that was your home of record. And then now you get a call at 11 o'clock p.m. in Atlanta, and you like, oh, I'm gonna sue y'all, when that's still 8 o'clock in LA, because it's a 3-hour time difference. But if you notify them, hey, I live in Atlanta now, they still cannot call you after 9 o'clock. They can't call you before 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, let's say you move from Atlanta to LA and you don't tell anybody. Let's say you've been in Atlanta and they've been calling you at 8:05 every day, and you like, oh my gosh, stop calling me. And then you move to LA, now it's 5:05 in the morning and you didn't notify them. If you didn't notify them, how are they supposed to know that you moved? So, you kind of got to be careful there, right? So a lot of times where you running from actually, from the mail, I'll probably open up every piece of mail possible, because they got tricks that they do. And that's why one of the most important things that you have to do is remove all the addresses that you don't have access to, because what most debt collectors do is they skip trace. And in the skip tracing process, what they'll do is they'll find every old address that's on your credit file when they pull, throughout the skip tracing process, and then they'll start sending those letters to you stating that you owe a debt, and they don't tell you you owe. What they'll do is they'll say, hey, we now obtain this debt, and unless you respond within a 30-day period, it's called a donning letter, DUNNING. And they'll send that letter to an old address, right, that you have on your credit file. And then now you go to dispute it saying, I ain't never got nothing. And then now all they got to do is hit back and say, well, we sent it to this address. All the bureaus are going to look at it and say, well, yeah, this address is on your credit file. You sent it to a legitimate address and they didn't respond. So therefore, we verified it, which means that even before you get in this process, anything that you don't have access to, go ahead and start that process first to get the addresses removed that you no longer have access to. And the reason why they're going to say, well, some accounts are open on this on this address. You can still challenge that unless you have an open account that you're actively paying on, because charged off and collection accounts really don't count. And you can actually stick it to the bureaus if they don't remove accounts that's attached to them when you tell them, right? So now what happened, and because we'll go down Cushman and TransUnion on some case study. I'm gonna discover all of that. This is my first video about credit here, right? And so now man, so my ADHD just kicked in a little bit. Could somebody spot me? What was I talking about? What was I talking about? My ADHD just kicked in, and I was going into. I was doing real good. Yeah. So now what happens is they send that Dunning letter out. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, they send that Dunning letter out, and so now when you go in and you tell them, hey, the old addresses that I no longer have access to, I need them removed. This is my only address with my ID, my information, my light bill, my water bill, or whatever. This is my address. You can see my ID. Here's my driver's license. Please remove anything else. All of the old phone numbers, blah, blah, blah. Click on them, blah, blah, blah. Delete them, right? And the reason why is because they can say, hey, I've been calling you at the 777-9311 number. And then they're going to be like, well, yep, it was on the file. So when they turn over those records, right there is one reason why 75% of the first round letters in that investigation request come back verified. So stop jumping in and letting people just take over your credit file and just start the dispute process, because now what starts to happen is they're going to go ahead and just start disputing accounts. And then you know how hard it is once they come back and verify. Then you going back and trying to remove addresses after, and then you're going to send another letter and they're going to say, well, we already investigated that unless you send more information. Now they just put the burden of proof on you. Now you see why when you say certain things and you start the dispute process and start making claims, how it looks bad on you and the burden of proof goes on you. So if you go in and you actually start the investigation request after you get the addresses removed, the old phone numbers, the old employers, blah, 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 removed from it. Now when you send the investigation request and they send something saying that, hey, I sent the Dunning letter out to such and such address, and then now they would look and say, well, this address doesn't belong to this person, because it's not like they got your information in TransUnion in drawers, right? Your information is just floating out. And then when they pull the report, they pull in all similar information. That's why a lot of people actually get merged accounts with other people with similar names. Me and my son, I already know when he turns 18, a lot of his stuff is going to be on my file, and a lot of my stuff is going to be on his file, which is why I make sure that I put senior on everything and junior on everything of his. But see, a lot of times when you got juniors and seniors, the seniors don't put senior on everything from their credit, and then they don't put junior on their kids, and therefore they just keep their regular names. They call themselves junior and senior, but it's not on their credit stuff. And therefore now they didn't have the same address, right? And then now they didn't have the same name at the same address, which means that now they look like each other. Twins even make that mistake, not really a mistake, where they get their files merged too with too much similar information together, right? Believe it or not, your information is not even pulled. Only the creditors who are applying for things pull your information by your social security number. Your social security number is not it's not they don't really factor that in when they pull in all your information. We're not talking about from your score. We're talking about putting everything on your file. This is why when they skip trades, some people do see information on there from similar names that have nothing to do with them. So you want to be careful there, right? So yeah, therefore get all of the old information removed from your file and then start the investigation request. And with that investigation request, what starts to happen is they got to fully investigate, and then that's when you can come back and you can start hitting them across there. So I can't just give you case by case stuff because I don't know how your files and stuff like that look. But I want to make sure that you understand the importance of the pre-dispute phase. And that phrase that phrase was coined by L. Williams. If y'all not following her, she's literally one of the greatest credit educators in the world. And she's not out here with all of these catchy phrase credit repair stuff. It's just crazy out here, right? So one of the things that you can do is you can actually go and create accounts. Don't dispute here, right? But go and create accounts with TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Go and create online accounts with them, right? But when you dispute online, you're waiving the rights that actually protect you. You get what I'm saying? You're opting into arbitration that's favorable to them, which means you're opting out of being able to sue them and all of that, right? And you're basically saying, hey, whatever you come up with, whatever you decide, we'll stick with it, right? So you want to make sure that you're careful there. But you can go on there because when you pull from all three, you'll be able to look at all the old addresses and things, get all of the old information out that way. You can actually create the TransUnion account, create the Experian, the Equifax account, and go and get all of the old addresses and information removed that way. Then once you get that confirmed of about 72 to 96 hours, because it's only personal information, then that's when you actually start the investigation request. So I'll be doing separate videos here, making sure that you understand the investigation request and how that works. But I can go ahead and take one call. That's all. I guess it sounds kind of corny, but I can go ahead and take one call, and then we can jump on off here. So yeah, who we got out here? Just go ahead and dial 213-444-2348, and we're taking a credit question and some things that you've been working on. So we got our first caller here.
You have a
Oh, the first caller actually hung up. So I guess they didn't want to call. So yeah. Next caller, I can take one person, 213-444-2348. Going once. Going twice. All right.
You have a new lead. Press any key to connect.
Hey, what's going on? You done called in to the Done is Better Than Perfect with Derrick Harper. What you got going on?
Yeah, my name is Murtada,
Okay.
and my question is I don't really have too much money on my credit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I'm not owing a lot. When I just came into the US, I for some time I was sick when I didn't have insurance,
Mm-hmm.
and the insurance put all this my debit on my credit, and it's showing right there. I'm pulling back my credit. What can I do to sort this out?
So I don't, because I know what's going on, my guy. Can you repeat that as well? Because I got to make sure that I hear you clearly. You say you came to
Okay.
the U.S.,
When
right?
I just came in,
And you had some things
yes,
because you didn't have insurance.
I didn't have health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And they reported some medical
So
bills
and I
on your
was
account.
sick for a while. Yes.
Gotcha.
So they put all this. I was owing about almost they said about 12,000, and they put it on my credit, and it's showing on my credit.
Yeah, gotcha. And
I'm
you
bringing my credit down
yeah, and you say you didn't have insurance, right?
at that time.
Gotcha. Now,
I now have insurance. Yes, I now have health insurance, but then when I
yeah,
was
yeah,
sick, I didn't have
the
health
insurance for
insurance
now, yeah, the
because I
insurance for
didn't have
now,
the paper.
the insurance for now, yeah, it ain't gonna go back and pay for them. It's kind of like insurance on a car. Like, hey, I wrecked my car, I need y'all to go pay it. But no, so one of the things when it comes to medical debt that's on your bill, that's actually reporting your credit, they can't legally report anything until after 6 months, right? From the initial statement from the treatment that you have. Now, one of the things that you can do or could have done, I don't know how long it's been on your credit. One of the things that most people do is they kind of opt into either like a verbal or some kind of agreement with them to pay a little bit, right? And one of the reasons, because medical debt, you don't go in and ask for medical debt. They don't give you terms. It's not like a revolving line of credit or things like that. They give you a medical debt. But what they do is a lot of times they can't report it until at least 6 months, right? Some even longer, depending on the state. But I know it's at least 6 month minimum. So let's say if you go in there and you get a treatment in January, they don't send you the full itemized bill until like February, right? Now, after February, they can't report it on your credit file until 6 months later, which means August. Now, the cool thing about it, and I don't want to use words like trick and things like that because it's so much misinformation and credit. I want to make sure that we adhere to, being compliant. So now when you go and you send the investigation request in to be able to challenge that, you would do that normally just like everything else on that medical debt, right? And then when they come back and they say, hey, we verified it is accurate, right? Now, sometimes you might have 5, 6, 7 different bills from one treatment, 5, 6, 7 different collections from one treatment. All right. Sometimes they might have the doctor's collection, they might have the hospital, they might even throw the ambulance bill on there. They might all be
Yeah,
separate.
I have about 5 of them or 6. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, and that's normal. So that's 100% normal, and that happens to like the best of us, right? But one of the things that I like, not really like, one of the things that most people do in this situation is they go into it with the willingness of saying, hey, I want to be able to pay this. So before it gets into collection, what you can do is you can say, hey, I'm in a hardship right now. What I can do is I can pay $30 a month until it gets paid off. My insurance can't cover it, blah, blah, blah. So now what you did is you literally gave them an option that you would pay. Remember, when you go to a car dealer and they tell you you got to pay it for 60 months, those are the terms that they gave you. You don't go in the hospital and put terms on there whatsoever, right? Which means that now there's really no terms on there, which means that you try to rectify it. I got people that's been paying on some medical debt for 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 years, right? Just at $30, $40 a month. So next time that happens, as just a way to say, to prevent this from happening down the road, try to reach out with that option first. Now, secondly, once it do hit your credit file and
Yeah,
you do
I've
it,
been paying some, like you said. Like you said, there are about
Mhm.
6 of them. I was paying some like every month. They asked me to be paying 125. Some said I should be paying like 79. I've been paying some of them like that.
Mhm. And did they? So while you were
So
paying on them, they reported it to your credit.
I don't know which one exactly reported because
Yeah, because
it
I've never
wasn't
seen
just,
them
I
report
thought
it
maybe
to
like,
your credit once they agree to let you pay X amount of dollars. I've never. So the ones that reporting on your credit were the ones you weren't paying on, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, because I don't want to confuse people on here. I want to make sure I got the accurate info. Because if I start, so if I don't have the accurate information, right, in yours, I will go down
Yeah,
a rabbit hole
I'm
of
sure
bad
it's not
info.
the
Yeah.
ones I'm paying.
So, all right. So the
Okay, the
ones
one
that
I'm
you
paying,
paid
I
X
don't
amount of
think they are the
dollars
one
on,
reporting.
so the one that you pay X amount of dollars on, they're not reporting those, right?
No, they are not reporting.
Okay, right. So that's the preventive method, right? So thank you for clarifying that because I don't want people to be like, oh, well, why would I pay them X amount of dollars a month? They're going to report it, right? So now what happens is the ones that don't get paid, or if you break that agreement, then a lot of times they might put that on there, right? But you want to lock into that agreement during that 6 month wait period, right? Because they can't put it on there until at least 6 months after they give you the statement. That's when you call them. Everybody has that 6 months to be able to try to work something out with them. Right. And that's a chance. And that 6 months is enough time by law that they got to give the insurance companies and all that chance to work it out and negotiate and all that. Now, when you start the investigation request, though, this is very important, right? When you start the investigation request and they come back and they say verified, that's cool, right? take the thing that they said verify with, and then what I want you to do is I want you to reach out to every individual creditor, right? And I want you to go directly to them, and you would do what's called a validation of debt, right? So verification is what you send to the bureaus to make the verifiers reporting accurate. Validation is when you want to make sure that the debt reporting and them being able to collect the debt is valid. You're validating that, right? So when you send out that debt validation, one of the
Okay.
things that hold on. So one of the things you want to do is when you send out that debt validation is you want to make sure that they send you an itemized list, right? And if they send you an itemized list of everything you got treated for, right? So sometimes what happens is when they send you an itemized list on something that they're not billing you for, it can be some HIPAA violation in there, which means that now they might have shared some information that they shouldn't have shared. And a lot of times, most debt collectors from medical debt are third party debt collectors, which means that most hospitals, most doctors, and things like that, they can just give you the itemized bill of what they did, but they shouldn't have what you got treated for on there. And a lot of times they make that mistake, and which means that you can leverage a HIPAA violation because a lot of those HIPAA violations are way more expensive than FDCPA violations. And what some people do is they leverage HIPAA violations to be able to get it removed. And HIPAA basically protects the information that's in your, it just basically protects your personal health information from being displayed or being shared with anybody that you didn't authorize. So that when you, most of the time, when you go into the hospital or go to the doctor, they would have if it's okay to share it and who you can share it with. And a lot of people just put their spouse and people like that on there. And a lot of times you don't authorize third parties to be able to get access to what you got treated for. Did you get that?
Yes, sir. But is it in writing, or am I just gonna call them on phone, or will I write them?
Yeah, everything needs to be in writing. Yeah, because it's hard to prove a phone call. So what I would do is, I mean, if you don't have the information to them, of course you can call and get the information to be able to send it to. But keep track of every piece of communication because I can't send a phone call to the bureau and my findings and say, "Hey, y'all, listen to this phone call," because it's probably not even somebody in the U.S. that's actually looking at that investigation from Equifax or Experian Exchange Union, even though they're here. 90% of their processing probably is not done here. So, and they only have a certain amount of time to be able to get through each investigation. So, yeah, I wouldn't try to force a phone call on them. Keep everything in writing. And then once you pretty much have everything in writing from the investigation request all the way down to, hey, this is where they violated me on HIPAA, they shared this, blah, blah, blah. And all the way down to the ICD codes, right? To where even the medical billing might be off. A lot of times where I see people get things deleted, where and I'm not saying I can't give this number, but a lot of times the billing is off, the coding is off, and which means that if they treated you for something and threw a code that charges $300 for something, then the code, supposed to charge $220 for something, then you can even challenge that. Therefore, when you ask for an itemized list of what you got billed for, now you got those codes in there, but then now you're going down not really a rabbit hole, but you're going down to where you got to really know your stuff. And most people, most successful credit repair companies got good medical billers or medical coders who understand the coding and what people got treated for. That's like a little hack for the people who got credit repair companies who didn't train with me. But now you know that if you got a good coder on your team and people that got medical debt that's reporting on there, that's one of the ways to kind of like challenge what people got billed for, asking for an itemized list of what they bill per code, making sure that whatever got billed per that code was necessary, because they might just be throwing all kind of stuff in there charging you for it, and you can actually start challenging that as well. Well, hey, I appreciate the call, man. And if you need anything else, just
okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got sidetracked on me, man. I don't know if you was writing or you was sidetracked on me, or I said, my boy,
okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Nah, you my guy. I got to get some seasonings from you though. But hey, have a good one though.
Okay. Okay. Sir.
All right.
as
Oh, dang, he was saying something. Man, he brave. He always call in. So, man, did you guys learn something today? Because I want to open up. I want to like go all the way in, and I got to figure out how to get on this. I see that some of y'all on YouTube. I see some of y'all on YouTube. That's what I'm talking about. Reza Myers, the only one from YouTube. See, the rest of y'all just on Facebook. None of y'all went over to YouTube. That's crazy. Okay, let love lead. That's what I'm talking about. Everybody on here. All right. So yeah, like I said, I just came in. All right. So I hope this was good information. Go back and watch the beginning of this video. I'm taking this video down from Facebook and I'm gonna keep it up on YouTube. So if y'all want to go watch the full video, go over to the YouTube channel where it'll actually be there. And if you leave a comment on the YouTube channel, and go ahead and subscribe to it, you'll get notified every time I go live. So ignore that thing at the bottom. I know some of y'all probably text live to that number on the bottom. It ain't even programmed yet. I'm just literally in the studio testing this stuff. So it should be live like tomorrow, right? Oh yeah, I'm gonna do them on student loans, bankruptcies, foreclosures, everything that you could think of, right? But I need y'all to stick with me. You know, I don't need people taking to go plays and it's like, oh, okay, good info. It's kind of like it's so much info to peel back. I need people in the right mindset to understand how the whole process works. So that when I start talking about it, I might reference something from before, and then I want you to be able to be like, "Oh, okay, I remember it was in that video." So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel at it's youtube.com and it's Derrick Harper Sr. Just like right here at the bottom of the video on the left. youtube.com/, the @ Derrick Harper Sr. So I appreciate y'all. Y'all enjoy y'all weekend. I love y'all. I'm gonna be having this line open every time I pop up, and we're gonna get consistent dates that we're gonna do. And I'm gonna go over and show y'all some of the you know, show y'all some of the videos that I'm working on. Hold on. Show y'all some that I'm working on. Got this whole thing in here. Let's see. Because this gonna be my next one that I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do how to buy businesses. Um, who want me to do that one? Who want me to show y'all how to fix a failing business and do a live call where you can actually call in and learn how to fix a failing business, right? So we're gonna have a lot. So this channel is gonna be lit with real sources and not just fluff. Because y'all been lied to enough and just told fluff from popular people. And then y'all chase popularity because popularity don't do nothing but kill your pockets. And I don't want nothing from y'all, but y'all to be successful. All I'm asking for is just subscribe. Man, somebody only want money from y'all. Just subscribe so that I can educate y'all more for free. And I doubt that I get like enough YouTube subscribers to be making millions or something like that. So that ain't really my goal. I'm not like a person that's gonna be up here dancing. All right. So I'm finna go ahead and head out. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Man, a lot of y'all that came over to YouTube, which is dope. So I want to make sure, So I'm taking the video down from Facebook and it'll be on YouTube. All right. Love y'all. Love y'all. Love y'all. Oh man, said thank you. I agree. I use your information. I use your credit repair information to get my score in the 700s. That's dope, man. Hey, Balaji, that's dope. I gotta bring you on one day. That's dope. So hey, y'all have a good and blessed weekend. Thank y'all for coming out. God bless y'all. Good night.